Hello folks, welcome to the Ocean State Cuisine. In today's video, we're going to be looking at how to make a New England corned beef boiled dinner. This happens to be one of my best dinners of all time. This is a super easy dinner to make. It only involves really one pot, so it's even an easy cleanup. And cooking the meat, the vegetables, everything together just adds a wonderful flavor. So first, let's start going over the ingredients that we're going to be using in today's dinner. So in the front, we have 2 briskets. These average usually around 2.5 to 3 pounds a piece. Plus, corned beef brisket is known for shrinkage, so it's going to shrink a lot from the original size as you're cooking it. And the reason for this is because some of these briskets contain a lot of fat and fatty membranes that runs in between the meat. So as you cook it, it's going to shrink. So you definitely want to allow for this, especially if you're going to be cooking for a lot of people. Now in the back row, starting from the left, we have some carrots, and these are whole carrots. Next to the carrots in the front is an onion. Then behind the onion is a head of cabbage. And then next to the cabbage, we have whole potatoes. The seasonings and the spices that we're going to be using, and there's not a lot involved, we'll touch on as we go through the cooking process. So in a very large pot, we added some water. I added some garlic. I added minced garlic in this. And I got the onion and I chopped it into 4s. And as it cooks, the onion's going to start breaking apart. And then we added some salt and pepper, but not too much salt because some corned beef is very salty. Now I'm adding 2 cans of beer into this mixture. Soon I'm going to make a video touching on the more scientific sides of cooking and the reason why I never cook in just plain water. Unless if it's to boil pasta or something like that. And you want to leave some room in the pot because you're going to be adding more vegetables and the meat to this. Now while I'm waiting for the water and the beer to come up to a boil, and it doesn't have to be a hard boil, a soft boil is fine. I'm going to start preparing my corned beef. So now, I have read recipes and even saw recipes on YouTube to do with corned beef dinners like this. And a lot of them put in all the blood and the juices from the packet into the water. I did it a couple of times and I didn't like the result. The blood never went away. And it wasn't very appealing when you went to serve the meal. Even though I know that that can add some nice flavors. But that's totally up to you how you want to do it. So I rinsed mine off. So now, your corned beef brisket usually will come with a seasoning packet, which contains a blend of like peppercorns, bay leaves, mustard seeds, and other spices, which I just basically add to the water. So right about now, our water should be at least a soft boil, as we see here. And the reason for the foam is because I added the beer to the water. Now gently in goes our corned beef briskets, which my sister is helping me with because I had to hold the camera because the pot was too tall to use my tripod. So we want to add the meat first and then the vegetables later, because the meat takes a lot longer to cook than the vegetables take. So the average cooking time for corned beef brisket is about 45 to 50 minutes per pound. And seeing because I am using 2 briskets, that does not double the time. So it's still going to be about 3 to 4 hours. And now we're going to add the seasoning packet that came with the corned beef briskets. I know some will try to make it actually adhere to the meat, but odds are once you add it to the boiling hot water, it's just going to separate. So now we're going to put a lid on this, and we're going to let it do a hot simmer now for about 3 hours. And then we're going to go in there with a fork later on and see how tender it is. My stove actually simmers pretty high, so I'm going to drop it down later on to probably 1. As long as the water is simmering and it's not just still, you're good to go. So once you cover it, wait about 10 minutes and then come back and check it and see how it's simmering. And then just adjust the heat from there and you're all set. Now we see right here that a couple of hours have passed. And see on how the grain of the meat is kind of separating? That's another indication that it's cooking. Now this meat does tend to float. Don't worry if some of it's sticking out of the water, because the steam, because you're going to keep a lid on it, is going to make that cook. And then sometimes with a pair of tongs, I'll just turn the meat over, but it's not always necessary. And then holding it firm with some tongs, stick a fork in it, and then see if it becomes a little bit loose, but yet not too tender where it's falling apart. Because once we add the vegetables, it's still all going to cook for about another 45 minutes. Now the reason why some of the scenes in this video looks a little bit funky like this is because I couldn't use my stand, as I said earlier, because the pot was too tall. And the stand that I use is only about 1.5 feet tall. So just please bear with me here, because I'm holding onto my camera with one hand and then trying to do the cooking with the other hand. Okay, so now I added our peeled carrots and our peeled potatoes to the water mixture, along with the cabbage at the same time. And I cut my cabbage in half or in 4s. And the carrots, I usually get those, the whole stick, the full stick, and I cut them in about 3 sections. And for the potatoes, ours was not that large, so we left them whole. But if you have very large potatoes, you may want to cut them in smaller sections. So for my dinner, everything took about 3.5 to 3 3/4 hours to cook. So now you want to test your vegetables with either a slotted spoon or a pair of tongs. Pick them up and then use a fork and see how tender they are. If they still seem very hard, just cook it a little bit longer. Now I know a lot of recipes when it comes to this says that they add the cabbage later. Whenever I've done that, my cabbage was never cooked enough. It was still hard, where everything else was fork tender. So I put the cabbage in the same time as all the other vegetables now, and it comes out terrific. And besides the meat, the cabbage is the main star for this dinner. The cabbage really adds the flavor to a boiled dinner. If you're not a fan of eating cabbage, I still advise definitely putting some in this dinner just for the flavor. Just use a lesser amount. Now, I did forget to mention this at the start of the video. I only used a half a head of cabbage, which was plenty for us because this was only being cooked for 3 people. And there we have it, all plated up and looking good. But now I did forget to do one thing for this shot right here. I wanted to pour some broth over it because it would make it look nice and moist. This can tend to dry out very quickly if you don't use the broth. And then when I put this on the table, I always put a cup of broth on the side so people could add their own. And I still have half of this left over in the pot, which I will add to an airtight container and add some of the broth to that container. Some like to add some mustard to their corned beef once they're eating it. A good spicy or a dark mustard really works well for this. And that's about it, folks. This is my rendition of a New England corned beef boiled dinner. And thanks as always for watching the Ocean State Cuisine. Feel free to sub up for more future delicious dishes coming your way, and comment down below because as always we love to hear from you. Until the next time, you guys have yourself a wonderful day. Take care. Bye-bye.